The following is a presentation of Morning Drive Media.
From the southernmost point of dawn to the lands of always winter and what is west of west and the shadows in the east, this is Casterly Talk, and we are still in the middle, the very, very early stages of our Game of Thrones rewatch. This is where we are going back to the very beginning and working our way all through 8 seasons of Game of Thrones and focusing on the themes and the lessons and the moments that make this show so important to all of us fans. It's still in our hearts, and we are here to analyze why, and I'm not doing it alone today. Welcome back to Casterly Talk. Welcome home, Andres Ace Cabrera. What is up, my friend? How are you?
I am good, excited. Rewatching Game of Thrones was an absolute delight. I forgot how much I love this show, and I forgot how much I knew about this show. It's kind of incredible because I never got the chance to do Game of Thrones trivia, but I still feel like I would have killed it. And going back and rewatching this, I'm just like, I forgot everything.
Yeah. Down little details, names, little moments. Yep. Yeah, it's been fun. But it's also so ingrained. And I know what you mean, where like going back to the beginning, which occasionally I'll pop on an episode, but like to go back and really like, all right, sit down and watch it. I'm just refinding the passion for the show that went all the way back to 2011.
Wow. Yeah. Again, it's interesting because season 1, I feel like is one of the most heavy as far as like, remember this, remember that from portions in the book. Yeah. Almost more than any other season that I was like, oh my God, they're referencing all this stuff.
lore, so much lore. So we are going to be diving in, a lot to get to. So let's go into it here. We also have some calls. We also have a great call that's actually looking back at the pilot and to the end of season 8. We'll get to that. And that's the thing too here at Casterly Talk, you listeners and those watching on YouTube, you can reach out via the Anchor app, leave a message. And even though we are doing the review, absolutely love to have you kind of call about an episode ahead that we're going to review or talk about and discuss. I keep saying review, but really we're discussing these episodes and going in deep. But also Game of Thrones news or something in general you want to talk about, please. That is still what this show is for. So we'll get to one of those calls in a bit. This is episode 5, The Wolf and the Lion. Original air date, May 15th, 2011. Director, Brian Kirk. Usually the directors work 2 or 3 episodes in a row to kind of get the flow going. Benioff and Weiss back in the writer's chair for this. Of course, big writer's room. But it was Brian Cogman last week, episode 4. The writer's assistant being moved forward to writer with that episode. But Benioff and Weiss back there. Same cinematographer and editor. Marco Pontecorvo is a cinematographer, and editing done by Francis Parker. So, Ace, where were you May 15th, 2011?
Not watching this episode, that's for sure. Yeah. I notoriously started, I think, later half of season 2, I think is when I started watching. So I had to do the rewatch. I had to go back and watch these. So I didn't start with as it was airing, which is an interesting dynamic now, rewatching it again.
It's like something with Star Wars too. You go back, you see, I saw Empire first or Return of the Jedi first. It happens. But what pulled you in? You had just heard people talk and you caught an episode season 4, and then you were back in, right?
Yes, this was. I mean, the only thing I heard about the show I remember is that as if it were yesterday, someone said it's the Battle of Many Kings or something like that. Yeah, which I get what they're referencing now, but that's how my friend put it. He was like, "Oh yeah, it's like Many Kings, medieval time, kind of going in battle," and I was like, "Oh, cool." And you follow each king. Yeah. So I thought every time they cut to a different person, it was a king. So I was like, "Who's this king at the wall?" Jon Snow. But
weren't wrong.
Yeah, exactly. But that was one of the most fun parts of the show because it immediately gave me my favorite character, which is still one of my favorite characters ever. He's definitely in my top 3, Robb Stark.
Yeah.
Because by season 2, he was the king. He was the king in the North, and they definitely referenced that when I was watching it, when I started watching it. So when I went back and rewatched, like, oh, he had a dad and his dad lost his head. It was a big old thing that I had to get into, but definitely a lot of fun going back and rewatching it.
Hey, all perspectives and all entry points are valid and interesting to me as a viewer. And again, I was book after season 1. I started getting to the books, but season 1 went in kind of blind. So I love going back. May 15th, 2011. I was just enthralled and intrigued. And episode 5, as we start to dive into it, this is where the action really does pick up. We had a lot of scheming and talking and great things going, in the first 4 episodes. Definitely some action, but we really start to get to some action here. And I put the note of the intrigue gets intriguing. It really starts to kick up. But interesting, no Jon Snow, no Daenerys in this episode. And even on this rewatch, I always forget that, if that makes sense, Ace, where I'm just like, oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh my God. I was so pulled in by the stuff in the episode. We didn't go to the wall. We didn't go to Essos.
Yeah.
You had that thought, but that was where I came down.
Oh, no, absolutely. Considering that we usually jump around to them, but also the fact that we stay in King's Landing was a lot of fun because we do get to see even more scheming, even more. I mean, Robert has that speech in this episode about how everything in King's Landing is scheming and not stabbing, which is what he wants. So yeah, I love this episode. I think it's great.
Yeah. And the final note for me before we dive into the themes and lessons here, with the death of Jory Cassell, poor Jory. We talked a lot about Jory last week, episode 4, him just going around getting treated bad by Jaime, Sir Hugh. He's just a good man from the North who's loyal to Ned, gets killed. And this is, along with the injury of Ned, slightly different than books. He falls off the horse in the book during the fight. This, he gets the spear in the leg. But first death of a character that you might have thought, if you're just watching the story as it plays out in front of you, you don't know the books, you might have thought, this Jory Cassell guy seems like a good number 2. He's going to go to the end. And here he is getting a little dagger, big dagger to the eye and dying. And that was, to me, one of the first, like, oh, this show, okay, we're doing that. So poor Jory.
Yeah, Jory. The thing about Jory, and maybe it's just because I was in a mood when I saw this episode, but homie had his last little shout out, like straight up, like he was like look, staring at that girl at the brothel. Yeah, and she was giving him the wink. She was like literally showing off the skin, and he was kind of he was hypnotized. And turns out, like minutes later, he gets stabbed in the eye, the same eye that was fantasizing about that girl.
That might be one of our themes and lessons. It might be there. We love digging deep on this show. Let's dive into them here. Andres, we've been doing this, and Rachel, first couple episodes. Rachel will be back next week on some of the episodes. We're just going in. No particular necessarily need for a scene-by-scene order, but let's. I'll put some down. You can put some down, and we'll jump in here. I got to take the first 4 episodes to me had real clear themes that and we're introducing new themes and new morality tests and questions. And this one does that. But this one was the first one where I had to go back and really concentrate and say, what am I pulling out of this episode? One of the ones I got was we always going to get stuff about honor. There's always going to be conversations about honor. But now this one kind of started pulling in the loyalty. And Rachel had mentioned this in one of our earlier episodes. That's always something you have to look for. What is the loyalty and the order of your loyalty in this world? Family, duty, honor. We hear that with Bran. What's your thoughts on what we got from loyalty here? Ned to Robert, Ned to his house, all those kind of things there.
Yeah, Ned to Robert. We have Ned to Catelyn, especially at the end when he kind of takes the credit for it. Yeah. We also have Tyrion to Jaime to Tyrion at the very end as well. There's a lot of loyalty going on here. And we also get the 2 most questionable guys of loyalty having their little speech with Varys and Littlefinger as well, which is very interesting. Yeah, loyalty is a great one because I feel like that's the entire dynamic of what the show represents, especially the earlier seasons. It's the idea of these old school times where you're kind of being a man of your word is part of your transaction as a person, right? Where it's like, I'm investing in this guy because I know he's loyal. I'm not investing in this guy because I know he's a schemer and a liar and a cheater. That was part of what made the idea of Game of Thrones and the politics of Game of Thrones so enticing for audiences, right?
Yeah, well, in this episode, like you said up top, we get a lot of time in King's Landing, so we get to spend a lot of time just peeling back those layers of loyalty and honor and who's doing what. And I want to focus. I want to actually jump right to that scene with Varys and Baelish in front of the throne. It is a great scene. It is a show only scene. They obviously, even in the books, obviously they're connected. They go back and forth, all that kind of stuff. Full disclosure, you love Baelish. We know that. I'm a fan of Baelish as well, Varys as well. But I love this scene, other than it's just them on fire as actors and performers, Aidan Gillen, Conleth Hill. But the idea of true goals, Varys versus Baelish. And also, I really want to focus on what is Varys's loyalty and honor, because he says to the realm, and looking back, it's easy to watch from this point now with the show done, to look back at Varys and go, see, he really did. He wanted to put the realm first. But back in, you don't believe him here for a second. And he's down there scheming with Illyrio, which goes against Ned, but it's really for the realm, and Ned's in the way of that. So your head's spinning over what Varys's actual loyalty and honor is. What were your impressions now compared to then? And let's dive into that scene.
Exactly. I think you nailed it. The idea of Varys seeming loyal, and then going back to when you see Illyrio and you start to realize, like, wait a minute, this guy isn't on our side. He has the foreign dignitary, as Littlefinger puts it, which puts him in hot water, considering that might be the most disloyal thing you can do, is to have someone from Essos in Westeros and try to have some sort of involvement with the king or overthrowing the king. I thought that was absolutely fascinating, considering I think he had the scene just beforehand when he met with Ned. And he told Ned, I am loyal, I'm a man of my word, and I'm telling you how it is right now. And he kind of has that heart-to-heart with Ned, saying, hey, I'm a weird guy, but I'm still a loyal guy, and I'm still the kind of guy who has honor like you do.
You're right. Addresses Ned, just says there's very few that have honor. You're one of them.
Yep.
But he's kind of saying, I think you're right. Like my honor is there. It's very present. It is until the very end. It's what kills him in the end. We're jumping to that, but we can have the discussion a little bit later when we're looking at that episode. But because I remember, it's part of this fun this time around more than any other rewatch, because I think it's because the show's all done and behind me, and it's like watching it from that perspective, going back and reliving the first moment of this episode for me, because I loved Varys, right? And his little, like, when he does a little shiver when he and Baelish are arguing back and forth on wit violence.
Yes.
But then when Arya's chasing the cat and is down in the black cells and sees this, like, I remember the time, like, oh no, oh yeah, this Varys guy's got to go. And so therefore, when he was saying stuff to Ned later on and in the season about, I'm loyal to the realm, and that's why I'm here to help you, dummy. I didn't know what to do with it. But going back now, and I'm like, you said it, like, Ned's in the way. We're rooting for Ned. We like Ned. I don't think Ned should have died, but I'm like, yeah. And looking back now, I can see where Varys is like, look, man, you got to work for the realm, man, not for House Stark, not for the North. That's the order of loyalty here.
Yep.
I'm not saying I agree with everything Varys says or does, but I look at it differently now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the reference that you had with Littlefinger's line when he says one shudders at the thought, and he goes like, it's incredible acting from the remind me his name. I can't believe I'm forgetting.
Conleth Hill, man. He is
yes.
He's the best. We
saw him outside of San Diego Comic-Con with the smoke break.
Yes. I'll never forget him in the lobby of the hotel I was at, and Sophie Turner, Maisie Williams, hundreds of people waiting outside for them, and he's just in the lobby staring at them. Yeah. I couldn't talk to him because I was like,
you just can't. I was there too. I remember that, and I was like, we can't go up to him. No way.
You walked in. That's right. And outside was Davos and Theon having cigarettes.
Alfie Allen was there too. He was outside.
Yeah.
And I was there with Macy and Sophie, by the way.
I never saw them. Yeah, you did, huh? Okay.
I did. Yeah, I rode an elevator with them. That was my claim to fame.
There you
go. That's the whole meme that was going around Twitter of like, who's the most famous person you've rode an elevator with?
That's right.
And that was mine. It was Macy Williams and Sophie.
Mine for that hotel trip was Gilly. I rode with Gilly.
It's the same level, bro.
Same elevator. Jamie Lee Curtis, my Jamie Lee Curtis.
Nice.
Story. I miss Comic-Con for that kind of stuff. And it was a hotel that I met Will Forte out front at.
You go.
I don't know what I was staying there. My credit card debt is because of that hotel.
Greg Grunkenberg.
Snap?
Famous Snap. Yeah, he was there too. He was in the elevator.
Dude, that's awesome.
And I remember clearly seeing him, and I was like, oh, but then I didn't realize that Sophie was right next to me. But anyways, back to the episode. Yes, this scene's incredible because you start, obviously no one besides maybe me liked Littlefinger at the beginning, right? You just naturally distrusted Littlefinger, but when you start to realize, like, wait a minute, he kind of is helping Ned. He does have a thing for Catelyn. Maybe he does want to help in the end, and he's right to question Varys' foreign dignitary, claiming that, hey, it makes sense because you're from Essos and you're bringing someone from Essos here. So maybe you're the traitor is very interesting. I also love the line of who's seen who last. When Littlefinger says, I have seen you more recently than you last saw me, is an incredible line. And I think it's really cool how they have the spy networks and you have the Littlefinger mockingbirds and or whatever his sigil is. And the spiders for Varys. But it really is one of those characters that Varys, he even has a moment in this episode, and I know we haven't gotten there, where it comes back at the very later season, and it's the idea of Dany's pregnancy. It's Varys who is the one who presents it to the council. And that kind of comes back to bite him when Dany finds out about that. Yeah, I think in season 7, right?
Well, no, absolutely. We'll talk about some of that foreshadow. That's a great point. I think I forgot to put that one down in my notes. But this scene, this might be, I don't want to say this is the core of the episode because there's so many great scenes in this episode. But Varys versus Baelish, again, you can watch it on the surface, but you can go down. It's loyalty, honor, true goals. And I love that. This is, again, why I love doing this rewatch with all the hindsight available to us. Baelish doing this for chaos and Varys probably actually being the one doing it for the realm. But you're right. Again, I keep bringing this up in season 1. Because of Sean Bean, because of Ned Stark, and because of what you presented by that character, anyone who's kind of working with Ned at this point, 5 episodes in, you're like, okay, I think I like them. Like, just I'm rooting for them on the field of play, you know, and that doesn't take us down the right path all the time. So, one other thing I want to talk about here, and we were talking about on some of the previous episodes. When Jaime and Ned have the great conversation in front of the throne, and Jaime puts out the, when I stabbed the king in the back because of what he did to your father and brother, it felt like justice. And Ned's just kind of like, oh, is that what you told yourself? And Jaime's face just crushed. I want to go back to that because this episode, going to that big scene, let's jump to, there's just more on what is justice or what is right and what is right to do in this world. Let's kind of take the real world, though this does bleed into, where we view the world. But in this story, you and I are Tywin Lannister fans. And often it's because we think, you and I say, he does some of the things that are tough but right. I want to go to the small council scene with Robert Baratheon saying, we got to kill Daenerys, Viserys too, and the baby. We need that. He's been saying that since episode 2. Now he's absolutely saying it. And everyone on there, including Renly, and we'll get a call here from a second from our good friend Eric Monroe about Renly. What is right in this world? Is it right for Ned to go the Ned route, Ace, of being honorable? We're not going to kill this child and her baby. And I would be on the side. I would go with that direction. Or do we wait until they cross the sea and we have thousands upon thousands of deaths? This is a big what if in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's such an interesting dynamic, right? Because I could maybe kind of see the argument for killing Dany, who is already a threat and who has the Dothraki on her side now. But at the same time, I think everything has to do with timing, right? The idea of preventing something that might be inevitable or that might be a disaster, but not over preventing to the point that you're so early that you might have been a little bit slightly immoral and unethical with your actions. So I think it's more, maybe we can wait to see what kind of actions she takes. Like even Ned says it. He's like, they haven't crossed the sea. Like, hit me up when they're, riding on their horses across the sea. Then I'll be like, okay, we got to kill Dany. Like, even he kind of hints at like, well, if she was like crossing the sea or something like that, or we know she's going to cross the sea, then possibly Ned would have been like, all right, maybe we can do something. But that's kind of the thing where it's like, we just found out she's pregnant. Let's not do anything hasty.
Yeah. And look, and looking back at Star Wars, something you and I both love and talk a lot about. I mean, there's always these lessons in these myths on, there's ways to fight and win, but there's also value in how you do it. And do you lose yourself? And again, I don't have, this is one of those times where I don't have the straight answer here. I think I'd side with Ned and would not want to advocate for the killing of a mother and her child to be. Like, I'm okay saying not what I want to do.
Yeah.
But again, hindsight of the story. But again, Renly says Eric Monroe's got a call here. We're going to play it right now. Bringing in Renly.
Hey, Ken Casterly Talk. So episode 5, The Wolf and the Lion. I really like the small council scene where Robert's, saying that Daenerys Targaryen is pregnant and she has to be killed with her unborn child. And one of the reasons I like this scene is a lot of what Robert's fears are and the other members of the small council end up happening in season 8. But another thing about the scene is Renly. He doesn't say a whole lot, but he does say Dany and Viserys should have been killed years ago. So he's going along with this. Even sweet, gentle Renly, sees the threat, and it shows me that he is, at the end of the day, a true Baratheon.
He's a true. Yeah, we love Stannis, Eric and I. We're going to focus on Renly in a bit here, but yeah, the fact that even Renly, someone I consider a good, likable character, would think this again. To me, I focus on the what are you sacrificing about yourself to get the victory. I go to, and I think Dany, until the end, not just some of the big moments in season 8, but until some of the final seasons, she's pretty pure of heart in her decisions, even though there's some tough choices and some tough lessons. And I'd say Jon Snow is too, where everyone here, Ned stays true to himself, gets killed for it. Everyone else who was like, let's bend these morals, how we fight this battle, including our beloved Tywin, as I say, beloved, quotations around them. They pay the price. So there is kind of that lesson to be had.
Yeah, I think the idea is who's going to pay the price eventually, right? Because it's the idea of like, maybe I will pay the price, but by then I'll be like 80 years old and I'll be old and YOLO. Or maybe I'll pay the price, but maybe my children can have a future. That's kind of the idea of what Tywin is, right? Because Tywin is all about legacy, about like, hey, everyone's coming after my head, but at least, I have someone who's taking care of the West. At least I have someone who's taking my place. That's kind of his idea of his justification for all his actions, which is interesting, right? Because he collects all this power and privilege, but he uses that to benefit only his family. He doesn't necessarily do it
for the realm, for the people,
or even to declare himself as king or something like that.
Right.
Maybe that's why I love Tywin. But yeah, it's one of those things where I love the scene because Robert, it says, small council, do what you're supposed to do. Counsel this man. And then everyone starts like spitting at Ned, like an intervention where he's like, Ned, let me tell you, this is bad. This is ugly. It's disgusting, but we got to do it. Renly, take the mic. And it's like, look, let me, and they all each one by one. And then even Littlefinger has a little thing where he's like, hey, if it's an ugly woman, just close your eyes. Like everyone's giving their own version of the same speech to Ned. Until eventually he quits. I mean, he resigns over this, which is kind of crazy.
Again, and the honor of Ned mixed with the stubbornness of Ned, it's all in between. And look, again, this is what we love about the show. This is one of those scenes, especially if you're looking back. At this point, we know Daenerys. If you season 1, we've already spent some time with this character. I think for the most part, we're on her side, or we're rooting for her, or we want to see more. And it doesn't seem like the right thing to do. And I would say I don't think it's the right thing to do, but I understand it. Like, so it's fun. It's tough. It's part of that stuff the Game of Thrones presents. One of the other things I really want to talk about, we did this recently before we started the rewatch on Game of Thrones, Robert Baratheon's empty soul and what that means. And there's a lot of lessons in Game of Thrones about trauma and moving forward and growth, or how do you adapt to the new and how do you process what's gone before. Robert Baratheon has never done that, and there's two tales of it. If he was the king, Ned says a line about if the king got what he wanted all the time, he'd still be in a rebellion. Robert himself says, I just want to hit somebody. And you telling me those cowards will let me win? He still wants that. And then we got the great scene with Cersei, just one of the best scenes of the show ever. One of the ones I reference all the time. where they talk about their marriage, keeping the realm together, hate keeping it together. But his soul, his heart is so empty and will never be filled. And that's one of the big Game of Thrones what ifs. Not if he and Cersei had a good marriage, but if he had been able to move past that trauma,
of
Lyanna and the rejection of it and everything that's gone by, the realm would have been better. And it's juicy character stuff that Mark Addy's great at. Talk about Robert Baratheon, man.
Oh, it's incredible. Obviously, that entire introduction where he's trying to join the jousting and he's so desperate to hit something, like you said, is both, like you said, it's both an emotional character moment and it's also hysterical, right?
Yeah.
Because we get a lot of funny moments. Obviously, the breastplate stretcher is iconic already in Game of Thrones lore. As well as one of my favorite lines. Ken, I don't know what the rule is on curse words on this show. Is that not allowed? If it's not,
say it, man. This is Game of Thrones.
I just love it because it's one of my favorite moments where he tells Robert when his belly is just sticking out, and he's like, "Robert, you're forgetting something," and he's like, "Oh, what a crazy sight! Bow, you shits, bow, bow before your king." And he just starts cracking up, and I think that's hysterical. It's one of my favorite lines of Game of Thrones.
It's also Mark Addy does such a good job because we always talk about here of just like, I don't think Robert started out as a bad guy. There's always going to be these brutal worlds. There's going to be things he's probably done that we wouldn't agree with, and he does end up at anytime he comes on the screen, my girlfriend boos him, and I understand it. I wouldn't dare take that away from her. Robert does a lot of bad things and causes a lot of problems and started this war. But that one moment with him and Ned, and it's like, all right, I get it. He's a charming guy. At one point, man, he could have made some better choices, and I could see why people wanted to follow him. And it's an insightful moment into the history of Robert, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously we get more of that with the Cersei scene as well. I still think it's an amazing scene when they crack up over her response of like what keeps the realm together, and she responds, "Our marriage."
Yeah.
And Cersei genuinely laughs. It's not a sarcastic laugh. I think it's a very genuinely Cersei kind of having fun and kind of having like a heart-to-heart, an emotional, heartbreaking heart-to-heart. But heart-to-heart nonetheless. And I think it's one of those few moments that we get of a genuine Cersei. We get a few of them throughout the show, but this is one of them.
Yeah, no, and look, it's one of the all-time great scenes. And again, it's one of those scenes. Not only is it not in the book, but it was one of those the episode's running short. Let's come up with something else that we can add. And there's a lot of great moments in previous episodes so far, and it just happens. And you reshoots. That's why you hear about reshoots and all that kind of stuff. So it's a simple scene, dialogue, 2 actors, a set on a soundstage type of situation. You don't have to go on location, and they throw this together. And this is one of the all-time best scenes, and it says a lot about these characters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really is an entire look into the concept of King's Landing and the politicking and the different relationship between someone like a Robert and someone like a Cersei. He even says in this episode, when you speak, it's your father's words that come out. And I don't think we've met Tywin yet in season 1.
No, he's in episode 7, right? I think
7 or 8. Yeah, I forget which one, but it's a moment where we get to see the dynamic of a Lannister and a Baratheon. It's absolutely incredible. And I even think it's funny when she mentions how Jaime isn't serious enough for the hand rolled.
And Ned's pretty serious. You talked about a lot of stuff going on in this scene. One of the big themes, and we talk about loyalty and where that lies, but going back to a little bit to the Varys Baylor scene about true power, true goals, power, and power is power, knowledge is power. We all know those lines of Game of Thrones. But going back to the beginning of this episode, we get another great Sir Barristan moment. We haven't spent a ton of time with him. Stands vigil for Sir Hugh and says, one of my favorite kind of quieter favorite lines in Game of Thrones is, "I stood vigil for him myself last night. He had no one." And immediately you're like, that's a save the cat moment. That's where you start liking a character for their actions and who they are and their fiber. But in that conversation, Ned says to me one of the themes of, quite frankly, the entire show, but just like they're talking about Sir Hugh and how he drew straws to fight Sir Gregor, and Barristan implying, well, kind of random. But Ned asks, but who holds the straws? And this concept of power, control, and what we're working against when you don't know. Like going back to the Varys scene in the Baelish conversation, like we don't know that Baelish just wants chaos because it's a ladder he'll climb. We don't really believe that Varys just wants to be right for the realm, do things right for the realm, as brutal as it may be. Same with Robert and those big questions we were talking about there. But I love that moment. Who holds the straws? Is that a good Game of Thrones subtitle?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's incredible. I mean, considering that all of Game of Thrones is this idea of power, and what is power? Is power a position? Or is power the person who influences the decisions of the position, right? Is it the king, or is it the person who's telling the king what to do? It really is a commentary on even politics in the US, of the idea of these politicians who are in positions of power, quote unquote, but in reality, they're just kind of following what the lobbyists or what their donors are saying, which come from massive corporations, which is the real power inside a capitalistic system like America. It's incredible commentary on the influence of power dominating a country.
And look what we have several times already being mentioned, and look what we have later on with the Iron Bank, but Tywin and their gold. And then Tywin reveals later on, we haven't pulled gold out in years. It's a lie. And then Loras in talking to Renly, that great scene, and Finn Jones kind of really showing up on the scene. Loras Tyrell here, front and center. Just like I'm rich too, and we'll back you. Like we'll support you. Yeah, that's where a lot of the power is, and what we're working against. Yeah, so it's great stuff, and it's just a great scene, touching little scene. I love their connection, Ned and Barristan having once fought each other, but again, who holds the straws? Something pretty important question to answer at every episode of Game of Thrones.
It's an incredible scene because obviously it has that moment, but it also mentions the Battle of the Trident, which is a great moment as well. And it mentions how Barristan is probably considered the best fighter in all the kingdom. I think he even says it, Ned says it, that he's considered to be the best fighter in all the kingdom, which shows who exactly Barristan Selmy is. He's like the highest level knight that you can possibly reach, which I think is incredible because we all love to see the whole who's the best kind of thing.
Yeah, who's the best? And Barristan is one of the best. One of the other great scenes, but also ties into one of the lessons here. And after the break, we'll go into important foreshadowing, things with more meaning, and our favorite scenes and moments too. But wrapping up the discussion on some of the themes here, Sir Loras defeating Sir Gregor is a knowledge over might kind of lesson and theme there, using his the horse that he knows is in heat and all that kind of stuff, using it against Sir Gregor. But Sansa, who goes on quite a painful at times journey, but learns a lot by the end, as we know, says here pretty simply, there is no honor in tricks. And I wonder if season 8 Sansa would look at this Sansa and be like, you're right, but that's not the way. Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things where it's like, if you realize that if you can get away with it and it's technically not gonna hurt you or anyone close to you, it's all good. That's an incredible moment. And obviously the whole Night of the Flowers moment is a great moment as well, with Sansa realizing that. And I love Littlefinger's response of, but there's quite a bit of gold. As he responds to her comment too. Yeah, love that there. And we talk about it, but we got a little bit of Clegane Bowl pregame. The syllables always stick in my throat there. One of the final things, Bran gives us kind of the house lesson. We get house lessons with Maester Lewin, but family, duty, honor. Again, the order of loyalty. This is something that Rachel definitely brought up in, I think, episode 2 here of our rewatch, of just what is the order? And it's pretty clear as we're getting some exposition and lessons from Bran, and he's getting told, hey, you can still learn to shoot a bow, all that kind of stuff. But we learn family, duty, honor, and what really is the right order. I don't know the answer, Ace. I don't know the answer.
That is an incredible moment. I love it because it's a quick little history lesson, house lesson, and map lesson. Very brief, but as someone who's a map guy and a house guy of Game of Thrones, who I used to know like all of these, and I used to know all the words as well, it was a fun moment of seeing how the locations are set up and how everything is in place. I think it's both a moment of like, we're teaching Brand, but we're also teaching the audience what these houses are, what the words are, and what represents what, because we find out obviously the Tully words, but we also get, Ken, My words, unbowed, unbent, unbroken.
You like
the Martell woes.
Yes.
Those are my favorite words, and obviously it's my house as well, House Martell.
House. And those words mean a lot to them, and it, generally in their history has worked out. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. On the podcast side, if you're watching the YouTube version, we'll stick around while I do the old file switch on the podcast. Very glamorous production work going on here, but Ace and I will chat in the break. This is Casterly Talk, Game of Thrones Rewatch. We're looking at episode 5, The Wolf and the Lion. We'll be back after this. All right, we're in the break, checking on Ace here. Did you just watch this episode in preparation for this one, or did you catch up with some of the other episodes?
Yeah, I mean, because it was only 4 beforehand, I saw the other ones as well. I'm planning to try and rewatch all of them if I can, just so I can keep up with you guys, you and Rachel. I know you guys are watching a lot of these, but I would love to keep up with you guys and keep watching them.
And we'll pop you back in whenever we can. It's good. And then we'll talk at the end of the show a little bit, but you just launched a Star Wars venture. I want people to know that. Tell me a little bit about what's going on with that.
Yes, it is called Sabak the Block. It is coming Tuesday, October 6th at 6 p.m. live. It's a really fun, interactive Star Wars show that I have planned with Emma Fife. If you guys remember Emma Fife, she was with me on Jedi Council. She's done other few videos with me. We are doing a interactive Star Wars show. A lot of questions and comments, a lot of games. And we're also diving into stories and news into the Star Wars universe as well. So I'm super excited. And it's over at First Cut, our YouTube channel.
Yeah. I'm intrigued. Love working with you both in the short-lived rework Jedi Council, where we had great things planned. I still wish people could see some of the stuff we were thinking of and cooking up, but I love knowing that maybe some of those ideas and even more will live on with what you guys are doing. And Sabak the Block that's a great Star Wars name.
Yeah, Sabak the Block. I wanted to include Solo somehow in there. So I got my Sabak there, and it's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of references to Solo, so be prepared.
Be prepared. You guys should do some Sabak tournaments. Can we live stream on Twitch you guys playing some Sabak? Maybe that night.
I think I'd be terrible at Sabak, if I'm being honest. I know how to play, and I think I'd be pretty bad. Yeah.
Speaking of being great, which you are, you got the big Schmodown title match coming up against Alex Damon for the Star Wars trivia belt. I know off air you were talking, you got to gear up and get ready again, but you beat me, you knocked me out. You got to be feeling pretty good though.
I don't know, man. Alex Damon is obviously the scary beast guarding the gate. I'm definitely overwhelmed with the tasks that I'm faced with, but at the same time, I know that if I go back and do what I did and prep for the other stuff, I was learning just the most bizarre trivia knowledge inside the Star Wars universe that I think anyone has ever studied. It's just some really weird and random stuff that I know. So hopefully that comes back in the end and they ask me very specific questions that I learned.
Watching you guys compete will be like watching Varys and Baelish. I'm rooting for both. All right, we're about to come back on the podcast side. And we're back here on Casterly Talk, the 81st episode of the show overall, but the 5th in our rewatch of Game of Thrones, going back to the beginning. Joining us this week on both the podcast and the YouTube side is Andres Ace Cabrera. This is one of his homes. We love having him on, talking Game of Thrones. He's so darn good at it. But Andres, we're going to start diving into favorite moments and foreshadowing. One of the things of going back and doing this rewatch with the entire story complete now, because it's something we would do even during the run of the show, is going back and looking at scenes, and there's either foreshadowing, which is fun, which carry their own kind of lessons and ominous warnings and just kind of fun little clues for us, but also things just simply that have more meaning, an emotional meaning. I'll start. One of my ones is we talked a little bit last week, but anytime now in season 1 you got Theon and Bran kind of going at each other and kind of interacting because they're the ones left at Winterfell. Not just what's going to happen in season 2 with them, but going all the way to the end in season 8 and some of the final decisions Theon makes to kind of maybe right his own personal ship as best he could. Every time I watch them, Ace, there's a little tug on my heart now. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, think about the idea of the foreshadowing moment of Theon going out protecting Bran at the very end. If only he could have hung on for a little bit longer, Arya would have been in the back. It would have saved him. But unfortunately, he had to go out. It was the way to do it. But he went out like a boss, and that's the important part.
He did. Of all the deaths, I really love that one. Sad as bittersweet for me with Jorah's death too, but that one works. Any moments for you that now have watching this, you're like, oh gosh, that means something a lot more now, or foreshadowing.
Oh yes, we get one big moment, and that is Braun and Tyrion at the Vale.
Yes.
Shout out to the friendship of Braun and Tyrion, but the 10 good men to impregnate the bitch.
Yeah.
Comes back in the end. I loved it because I was like, oh my god, that's the moment. And it's also the idea of this relationship that I believe is first introduced in this episode between Braun and Tyrion, when we find out that he's like one of the best fighters we've ever seen when he takes out the Hills tribe people. And eventually Tyrion responds to his comment with "I like you," which eventually shows what they're going to become in the very end. And I swear to you, man, Braun became such a fan favorite that he just got away with everything in this show. It's kind of insane if you really think about it, where it's like, really? What was his title at the very end? I forget. It was like the Vale. He didn't get the Vale. He got the High Garden, right?
Yeah, well, he got the Stokeworth, Castle Stokeworth for a while. Then then he moved over. Yeah, you're right.
The Reach. He's the.
I mean, he's got so much, and I think we know for a fact. You know, they kept him around. He's still alive in the books and whatever you want to play that game, but you can't argue he's lesser. He's a lesser character by the later plot points in the books. Not so much here because Jerome Flynn is so damn good, and we saw him a little bit last week. Tyrion giving him the gold for the room. And this week, I put the note of just Braun in action. We really see it. We start to be like, okay, this guy's going to be around a bit. He's not just some extra. We got it. And of course, if you knew Jerome Flynn, you'd be like, oh, he's playing Braun. We get it. But especially for me, watching it for the first time around in 2011, going, all right, I'm like Tyrion. I like this guy.
Yeah. Obviously, we also get the moment of Tyrion speaking to Catelyn about, you know, what sort of an imbecile arms an assassin with a dagger, his own dagger. I think that's an incredible line. And it's a line that kind of describes Tyrion in a nutshell, where you know he's smarter than everyone else, but he's also like funny the way he does it and he says it. We get the slanted cells, the sky cells in the Vale. Lysa Stark.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Lysa. My bad. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, about that whole sequence. You brought up the Tyrion stuff. I've issued my official apology to Catelyn Stark over the years. I felt I was a little overly harsh on her decision to take Tyrion captive on the road. It was maybe in the end a bad move and everything, but I used to be a little more harsh on the character. Now I'm like, nah, I get it. You're fiercely loyal. In fact, Maester Luwin talks in Bran. That's kind of one of the moments that means more to me now is when he tells Bran, you know, she will love you fiercely until her death. And we know what's coming with that. But going to this, as it starts to unravel, it means a little more to me now, too, where she's made this big decision that essentially launches a war here. That's why I used to kind of put it on her shoulders. Totally unfair of me, but I did it. But as Tyrion's like, oh, am I starting to make too much sense? Yeah, when's the last time you saw your sister? When she walks in and sees Sir, or Robin, Sir Varys takes him up and Robin's breastfeeding and Lysa Arryn's crazy, and it starts to dawn on Catelyn Stark. Now watching this, that just had not a specific more meaning for me now, but I'm just looking at it going, you might have, maybe you should turn around some of the decisions you made here.
Yeah, maybe you should have talked to Tyrion beforehand. Ask him if he did it. Even though he would have probably denied it, he probably would have made some points. The line reading of Peter Dinklage in that one line, it's 2 words. You said it already, but when he says, she's changed, like the way he says it is so spot on, where he's like, have you seen your sister? She's changed. Like, my God, you're going to be in for a trip. It's an incredible line reading.
Yeah, and hey, look, I think Jaime makes rash decision in this thing too. So again, Catelyn's not the only one making rash decisions for the betterment of her family, but big one here. And as it starts to dawn on her face, you get it. So there's that. I talked about the Maester Luwin one. This is I love Renly kind of talking about King Robert going hunting, and you're like, oh yeah, that hunting trip's not gonna be a good one. And we now know that's George R. R. Martin's least favorite scene in all of Game of Thrones because of the budget reasons. Revealed that this past week. So there's that. Couple more from me. King Robert talking about the Dothraki army, 5-1, landing on the shores, and the need for one unified army. Out of that great conversation we already talked about, but it's one of those moments you look back, you're like, yep. When it finally happens, there were some people that saw this coming,
Yeah, that's an incredible moment as well. I want to shout out before I get to the final one, before I get to the Jaime and Ned, because I feel like I have to shout that out.
Yeah.
A funny line, I think it's hysterical, is when Arya talks about the conversation that she overheard with Illyrio.
Yeah.
And she says, like, I overheard this crazy conversation. And I'm pretty sure, I didn't see their faces, but I'm pretty sure one of them was fat. And it's just a funny line where she's like, I didn't see them, but I'll guarantee one of them is fat. I just know it.
Thank you, Ari. Thank you, Ari for that. Yeah. Great scene. And later, and it's not like a big reveal of foreshadowing, but just knowing later on that she probably would have the skills to spy completely and know the game that's going on.
That is foreshadowing. Think about it. She moved like a cat. At the very last scene. You didn't even hear her sneaking up on you.
Yeah.
The Night's King. If you only realized that she was literally training with a cat when she was younger.
It's foreshadowing on a smaller level. Not we mentioned it. I think when you and I have been talking about the other episodes, but when she shows back up, what is it, Winterfell, and they're like, two guards are blocking her at the gate, like, you're not getting in here. And here's the first time it happens, where that's a great scene of, your little sea urchin get away. And she's like, my father's the hand of the king. I love that kind of runner with Arya as a character. The idea too of Ned fiercely refusing to go along with the plot to murder Dany for bigger reasons, for honor reasons, and all those kind of things. I think it's a tale of his honor, but also to me, I've always taken a little bit as another one of his protecting Jon moments, and just in his head, I've always thought there's probably some percentage. Again, I think it's mostly about Dany and not wanting to be okay with that murder plot, but just the idea of if he kills that Targaryen and finds out there's another one, he will probably try to kill Jon, and I'm trying to stop that now. I've always taken it as that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't even catch on to that, but that's spot on. I definitely feel that as well, considering that he knows what happened. That's spot on. I didn't even realize that. That's great.
Just one of those little things, again, I think the scene is mostly about Dany and that, but it's got to be there too. Any other foreshadowing or moments that just tug on your heart a little bit more now?
Ooh, let me look through my notes. I think I named all of mine. The only other moment I have is Marillion, singing as Tyrion descends from his horse and he's just singing everything Tyrion's doing. Yes. Shout out to him because he gets it bad in what is it, season 3 or 4?
Oh yeah. Singing about Robert's death.
Yeah. So that's a tough one there. Yeah. Tyrion gets his first kill. I thought that was something that's noteworthy.
Oh yeah, and a brutal scene, and it makes me think of Jorah put a sword in a man's hand. There's a beast in every man. You put it, and it stirs me to put a sword in his hand, and a shield too, apparently.
Yeah, and I love the counter from Braun when he's like, "You need a woman," and he looks at Catelyn, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm down if she's down." And Braun laughs and is like, "Hey, I like this guy."
Yeah.
And then the final one I have. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I said no. Go ahead.
The final one I have is Jaime versus Ned. I think that's, we always want to see a fight, right? So this is the idea of the legendary Jaime Lannister versus a slightly older, not so much in his prime Ned, who eventually, the Ned who took down the Sword of the Morning.
Yeah.
So in a way, Ned is a legend too, considering of his legendary status with Dane. So I thought it was a fun fight. Obviously, it's not the best fight, I still think that Jaime would have won in the end, if I'm being honest.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think Ned feels that. I think when he says something about, like, if you kill me, it's almost like, if you strike me down, I'll be more powerful than you can imagine type of Obi-Wan line. I think he knows it, but this fight's been gearing up since episode 1. Anytime they've been going back and forth with the War of Words, and so to finally see it, especially going back to 2011, watching this first time, when you just don't know what's happening if you haven't read the books yet. I mean, this is it. Like I said, this is when the action in the show really kicked up. We're like, all right, enough talking. Now we're seeing this happen. And my heart was in my throat the first time I watched this. And it's fun to kind of relive it now, especially because you can see the budget's a little less, the set's a little smaller. It seems smaller scale than the stuff that comes later on in the show. Understandable budget reasons and whatnot. Great moment, great scene. We can talk a little bit about that at the end, about some of Jaime's sense of weird honor too, in that. But other kind of favorite moments for me, you got the Mountain versus the Hound pregame warm up, as I'm calling it, like you said. Game Bowl 0.1, I know. But I love the Hound. Just when Loras says something, thank you, sir, and I'm no sir.
Yeah, I'm no sir. Yeah,
it's just part of his character, and it's ingrained, and to see it there. This is also our first real time with Roz. We'd seen Roz before. Esme Bianco was just supposed to be there, just kind of day player, whatever, and then they liked her enough to keep around. And then she's mentioned, she's around. John mentions her, Tyrion, Theon, and we know where she ends up going. And to me, I love to celebrate this character. And it's a weird scene. We get it's a sex position scene with Theon. Let's not hide that, but through that and seeing that's what she does, that's her job. You see her insight, her knowledge. She knows her place in this world, but then knows how to make that work and does want to get out of that or move on into something else. And so, her talent is seen by Baelish. So I've always liked Roz as just a character for what she does bring. And you get to see in her own way, she's fighting her own battles and working her own story, trying to control it as best she can going forward. And I like that stuff.
Yeah, big shout out to Roz. She's definitely one of the characters that developed quite a bit. One I have written down here, and I didn't even realize it because we moved past it so quickly, is a quick little moment when Loras Tyrell gives the rose to Sansa.
Yeah.
And looking at it now, I was like, wait a minute, is this kind of like a nod towards the tourney at Harrenhal? With Rhaegar and the Blue Winter Rose that he gave to Lyanna. I might be reading too much into that, but I just thought of it and I was like, wait a minute, that's like a cool little nod.
Yeah, obviously Loras, little different interests than Rhaegar, but yeah, I think it could be just as a fun lore kind of connection.
Yeah.
But I had that moment down too, because it is what happened, their kind of tale and her kind of Sansa working with the Tyrell family, and just kind of see this interaction and kind of her kind of obsession, infatuation maybe is more the word, with Loras down the line, and it's present here too.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Finn Jones. I think Finn Jones is really great. I just think did a great job with Loras Tyrell.
Iron Fist, man. Oh yeah. By the way, this could also be a quick, and I can't even forget. I can't believe I'm realizing this now. The idea of him giving the rose to the prettiest girl in the crowd as he kind of like winks at Renly, not winks at Renly, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I think this was a tell to the audience saying like, hey, this guy had zero interest in girls, but he's just faking it to please the crowd.
Yeah, and part of the game, part of who's holding those straws to draw. Tiny moment here, Yoren meeting Arya and calling Arya a boy, beyond just a kind of a little bit of a running bit in season 1, but where that factors in Baelor in that episode 9, and Yoren taking her north and just what's going to happen when that really when he's like, no, you're a boy right now. Like I like that little nod, a little foreshadowing, but also just a fun, not fun, but a good moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great one. All right, let's talk some Ned stuff here to start to wrap this up here a little bit here on a fun episode to dive into. We've got the fight, but also this is what I call one of the biggest what ifs in Game of Thrones. One that we've talked a lot about here on Casterly Talk and before under the Daily Thrones banner. Ned takes off the Hand of the King designation there. He's out. He's packing up. Jory, not Jorah, Jory, go get the girls. He's almost there when Baelish shows up. And then even then, it's kind of like, all right, this is the biggest what if. If he had just this one time stayed stubborn to his to himself and got out of town. What do you think about this scene now?
Wow, that's such an interesting dynamic, considering even if he did get out, I mean, obviously his life would have probably been saved.
Yeah.
But war would have still been inevitable, right? I mean, considering that Tyrion is pretty much at the Vale already, awaiting his sentence.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Obviously, it still would have been the wolf and the lion in the end, I feel, considering that if Tyrion is still not free, then there still would have been a war. Even though, like, a few episodes later, Tyrion gets free because of Braun in his own weird way. But yeah, this was definitely, that's a great moment. I love Littlefinger's drop. I love it so much when he's like, hey, when are you leaving? And he's like, I don't know, man. And he's like, well, if you're still here by tonight, I'm gonna show you something good. Last person Aaron saw. So if you want to stick around, and he's like, well, I gotta go. It's up to you. It's up to you.
If you want to help your buddy, you're still like Robert, right? I know you're mad at him. I know he was yelling at you, but hey, I'll show you something. Yeah. And again, what ifs are fun. You can, we'll never know. And that's part of the story. This has to happen for the story to work, I guess. But I still watch it. I remember watching it, by the time you learn what happens to Ned again, and if you know, but it's probably more frustrating if you've read the books and you're watching season 1. You're like, it's right there, Sean Bean. Turn around. But just going back, even rewatching within season 1, just going back to this moment, it's always broken my heart because he's just right there, man. He's packing up. He's literally like, all right, damn it, Baelish. And he goes for it there. Yeah, goes to the brothel, sees Robert's, I think, daughter, right? Bastard daughter there. It's frustrating. But the fight happens. The fight happens with Jaime. You talked about it. What do you think about Jaime? A character that I think you and I go on to like, right? Like we go on to feel for him. Yeah. What do you think about Jaime in this moment? His sense of honor, justice, loyalty. Again, we're talking about honor of loyalty. Ned in staying puts maybe the loyalty that he feels towards Robert above the loyalty to himself and his family by staying. Jaime, family loyalty over the realm right now, over politics, over anything else. You can see where it gets them. What do you think about Jaime, his sense of loyalty, and what happens in this scene here?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because it's even a little echo with Tyrion when he says, if anyone lays a hand on me, you'll have to hear about Jaime Lannister coming after you. So it gives that little echo of the two brothers mentioning each other and kind of defending each other and claiming each other as brothers, being each other's defender. And I love the idea of Jaime fighting for Tyrion. We get that moment of like, oh, we hate this guy. He just pushed a kid off a building. He's not a good guy. And yet he's fighting for his brother that we're actually kind of on board for as a character with Tyrion. Because I feel like at this point, audiences like Tyrion, or at least are starting to like Tyrion. It's a great moment because it really is a more human moment from Jaime Lannister than anything else. But at the same time, this moment comes back in a few episodes later with Tywin. And I believe Tywin, correct me if I'm wrong, says you should have killed Ned right then and there.
Yeah. And again, going back to even the conversation we're having about Daenerys and Ned's, hear me out, folks. Like I'm not saying I would like Tywin in real life, but in the world of Game of Thrones and Westeros, I don't think Tywin's wrong. If the goal is house loyalty and winning, it's always not always the goals in life. And I do think it's important how you fight these things. And Jen, Jaime has that this comes from some kind of sense of honor. Like I want to prove myself. It is a little bit of a puffing of the chest, but he's not happy about it. But yeah, Tywin not happy about this.
Yeah, this definitely comes back to bite him in Tywin's introduction when he goes after Jaime. It's a great moment because we see Jaime as one of the players, right, in the games, at least kind of a player. And then Tywin shows up and just squashes him. And he's like, you're not even in the game. Like, you haven't even stepped up. So it's great.
Yeah. I got some stars of the episode. We always kind of highlight some actors, big and small, all through this, but I mentioned them. But I really do like Finn Jones, and he goes on to be an Iron Fist and all that stuff. But I think here he just really, I do like the shaving scene with Renly and everything. He just makes a compelling case, and it's key to Renly's character, and Loras there's loyalty too as well. So I like that. And then Conleth Hill, this is we'd already met him, we've already seen him, we've already got some great scenes with him. But this episode, he just takes it to a new level.
It's insane. His scenes are insane. How good he is. His little character beats, his nonverbals. It's spot on. I think he steals the show, in my opinion. This episode, at least.
This episode, yeah. And look, obviously, every episode, everyone brings it. Aidan Gillen. One of the reasons Baelish is such an interesting character. He is in the books, but I think Aidan Gillen took it to new levels. But Conleth Hill takes Varys to amazing levels and amazing heights in this episode. Any stars for you that I haven't mentioned?
Ooh, yeah, the actor for Renly, you're going to have to help me with names of actors. Right. I think he does well as well in this episode. He has small moments, but that moment with Finn Jones, the shaving scene, I think is pretty spot on as well.
Gethin Anthony is
there you
go. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I guess I have to do a final one, I can never pronounce his name. Barristan Selmy's actor.
Ian McElhenning.
Yes. Yes.
McElhenning, maybe. Yes. Yeah. Also, Jan Dodonna from Rogue One.
Yes, he is.
He's so great. He's just amazing. I love him. I really do love him. And he's great here too. And shout out to Kate Dickey as Liza Aaron, who playing that role, and it's a prosthetic breast that Robin's suckling on there, and Kate Dick, the performer, the actor, was like, I just hope people realize that was not real. But she really went all out, and that's what these performers bring. They bring these characters off the page, and they're well written on the page most of the time, but they take them to new heights. And often George R. R. Martin will say, especially when he's more involved early in the show, in the early season, just like these performers brought something and changed even my perspective on some of the characters there. As we start to close, I mentioned some of my favorite quotes in this episode. I really do like Sir Barristan with that. I stood vigil for him myself last night. He had no one who hold the straws, but Varys saying, talking to Ned about why Jon Arryn was killed, and Varys just says he started asking questions. Always kind of a little chilling kind of line there. Yeah.
That's a great one as well. Obviously, you said I'm no Sir from The Hound. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I mentioned the ones I did as well, but I'll mention them again. The Littlefinger. I think I last saw. I think I've seen you more recently than you last saw me. I think that line is great, like comeback line.
Yeah.
What else do I have? Oh yeah, Braun's "Give me 10 good men and climbing spikes, and I'll impregnate the bitch" is probably the best.
That's an important one. That one's to go on. Yeah, and even Varys with his when he's "Where's your balls?" I don't know. And we used to be so close.
That's great. Tyrion, when Lysa mentions Aaron, and he and threatens him and says he's the killer, and Tyrion's like, "Oh, did I kill him too? I've been a busy man."
Absolutely great stuff, and we get to meet Mord finally, guarding those sky cells. Great look back at episode 5, the Wolf and the Lion. Man, love doing this with the Ace. Let's do it again real soon. This is an episode again. You go back and the show really starts kicking up. It's already pulled you in, but now the action and is going. The intrigue is flowing. Great episode to look back on with you there. So we're almost done here on Casterly Talk. Oh, you know what? Take it back. I got those calls. I want to play those calls here. I skipped that part of my notes. I apologize. We got a kind of a two-parter here from Donald Long about Robert and Cersei.
Hey, Casterly Talk. Just wanted to talk about the Robert and Cersei scene, but more importantly, the moment talks about Lyanna and what that name alone meant to them and their marriage. Wherein Cersei, no matter what she said or did, it would never matter to Robert because she would never be her. And then Robert's turn, he's really just holding on to the name because he confesses he can't remember what she used to look like. So he was really just holding on to the name and the memory of what she meant to him, and then the lie, what he thought he meant to her. And we get a little bit of the lie he probably always told himself, the theory that he always told himself until it was true, that Rhaegar took that love away from him and killed it. And no matter being king, no matter the Seven Kingdoms, it would never matter because he would never have Lyanna with him. And hey, sorry it's a two-parter, but just wanted to bring up this quote.
It's okay, Doug.
Part of this quote that Cersei had in the scene is of, what harm can Lyanna Stark's ghost do to either of us now? Which, looking back of it, is kind of funny how much harm it could have done, and kind of really will do later on in the series, of that ghost being in the form of Jon. But also, this scene, we know, fun fact about the scene, we know this scene wasn't in the books, but also this scene was only written and then later on put in this episode, because this episode was running short on time. Yeah. So if it wasn't for that, we almost never would have got the scene.
Yeah, we mentioned that earlier. Thank you, Donald. Great call. I definitely want to get that call. A great insight, Donald, about that scene and Lyanna. But I love that he said about the ghost of Lyanna Stark. It does, in a way, come back to haunt Cersei, with Jon Snow showing up to kind of ruin some of her plans later on. So there's some foreshadowing there as well.
I love that. I love the idea of Jon representing that and representing Lyanna Stark in so many different ways. I also love that, maybe it's just me, but as soon as she said that, rewatching this episode, I thought of Jenny's song. Is that what it's called? Jenny's old song?
Goldstones, yeah.
Jenny Goldstones, yeah, with Jenny would dance with her ghost. Jenny would dance with her ghost. Is one of my favorite songs.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I was like, yo, maybe Lyanna could dance though. Maybe she can get down. Her ghost can get down, man.
Awesome. That's awesome, man. And this one, I wanted to play. This is not necessarily about this episode, but Addie's back. She's been calling in a lot, and we love Addie's thoughts here. And she's catching up with the rewatch, catching up with the show. So she had a thought after watching episode 1, the pilot, and how that goes to a last scene with an important character. Here we go.
Hey, Ken and Casterly Talk, Addie again. Sorry it's been a while. I'm behind on my podcasts and I'm behind on my rewatch. But between watching the pilot again to be able to listen to the rewatch episodes and thinking about the question you posed a couple weeks ago about, or that another caller came in with the rhyming of first and last scenes, I wanted to bring up Daenerys's first scene for again, because I'm watching it right now and we all think of it in terms of the bathtub and we should have known. But if we go even earlier, there is some poetry there too. Her first scene, her first lines of dialogue are with Viserys regarding her role in all of this and not wanting to wake the dragon. And her last lines of dialogue with Jon are a story about Viserys telling her about the Iron Throne and her not being able to picture the number of blades because she couldn't count to 20.
Great stuff from Addie there. Yeah, we've been talking about some of the, first scenes to last scenes and what those mean, and we've been focusing a lot about Jon. Addie's right. This is what I'm looking forward to getting to season 8 and kind of really analyzing Dany's fall. But that final moment, harkening back to Viserys, when it was kind of weird for me. I remember watching season 8, and I mean weird in a good way, of just like, wow, Dany having any kind of positive nostalgia, if you will, for Viserys on any level does show a little bit of where her mind might have gone. Bigger conversations to have around that. But I like this. I like what Addie's bringing up here. What do you think about the first and last for Dany?
Yeah, that's kind of incredible, right? I obviously we go back to that scene, Dany's last scene in the entire show in season 8. When she's kind of remembering Viserys in a different way than we remember, where she's like, "Oh man, remember my brother Viserys? I miss that guy. What a guy!" And we're like, "What? Didn't you see that guy die and you were cool with it, happy and relieved?"
Yeah.
But the idea that Viserys starts out as already one of the most despicable characters in the show right off the bat in episode 1. And she references him in kind of a beloved way in the finale is kind of interesting as well. Yeah, that's a great great connection. Absolutely.
I love that Eddie brought that up because it's something I'm definitely going to be paying attention to going forward too as we track that there. All right, so there we go. That's our look at episode 5. I did want to get to those calls. I appreciate y'all. Let me get those into the episode here. We're almost done here, as I've said before, but if you want to contact Casterly Talk and be on the show with a call, go reach out via the Anchor app, and you got 59 seconds or so. Two-parter's okay if you got some good points, like our friend Ranger Donald, we call him around these parts, Donald Long. You can do that. You can follow me on Twitter at Ken Napzok, or go to my website, kennapzok.com. I do want to highlight that coming up October 10th, there'll be a live Star Wars comedy variety show that I'll be a part of. It's Riley's Cantina live from El Cid on the Sunset Strip. No audience members in the building. You'll be the audience at home. Just go to ticketweb.com for tickets, or go to kennapzok.com, click on the events page. You can buy tickets. We have VIP tickets with exclusive merch or general admission. VIP will also get you a live Q&A after the show, a virtual Q&A. So a lot of fun stuff there. Special guests, including Rachel Cushing. She'll be on stage with us. So we're going to do it right and responsibly, but we're going to have a fun show. Other special guests lined up as well, including Jennifer Landa, Joseph Scrimshaw, Josh McCouga, Nathan Hamill, and more. Oh, and the Wangers being part of it too. It's a comedy variety show all about Star Wars, me and Mark Riley. So that's coming up on October 10th, 7 p.m. Pacific, live, but the link will live for a couple days if you can't watch it that night. So that's what I got going on. But Andres, I also, number one, want to thank you for coming to your Game of Thrones home, or one of your Game of Thrones home. You can talk about Game of Thrones all over this fine Seven Kingdoms, as far as I'm concerned. But I want to highlight again what you're doing on your channel over there, The First Cut, and what you've specifically launched with Emma5, the Sabak the Block Star Wars show. Tell us all about it again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tuesday, October 6th is our premiere day. October 6th at 6 p.m. live. We are doing Sabak the Block, a new, fun, interactive Star Wars show with me and Emma Fife. You guys can tune in there, join us in the chat, sound off in the chat, and we're going to get you involved with different games, with different role-playing scenarios inside the Star Wars universe, as well as getting into The Mandalorian Season 2, which is coming up in just a few weeks. So make sure you guys tune into the first episode of Sabak the Block over at First Cut. Our YouTube channel is First Cut.
There you go. Follow him over on that wonderful Star Wars adventure. So for Ace, for myself, and for, poor Ned Stark, it's going to work out fine. You're going to heal up. Everything's going to be fine, right? We'll see you next week for episode 6 of season 1 of Game of Thrones.